Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Board Games Hitting My Table. So this is where I talk about all the games that I personally have been playing. Now normally I do one of these episodes every couple of weeks, but during the first half of June I really didn't play anything other than new games. So what I've done is I've compiled both those videos together here, and even considering that there's not that many games here to talk about, because again I have been playing so many new ones. Before I get started on these games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in my show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. But let's start with the games. I'm going to start with Finca here. So this is one of many games I'm talking about here that I did purchase at the UK Games Expo. Now this is a kind of a medium light, and maybe even venturing on more light than that, kind of a resource management and contract fulfillment game as you're moving your meeples, I suppose, or your pawns around this windmill, and whenever you land on a spot you're going to get resources equal to the type and equal to the number of people already on that spot. But the number of spaces you actually move in the first place is equal to the number of people already on the spot you just left from. So what this does, it creates some kind of standoff moments or some timing problems you have to overcome, because you might think, you know what, I need one more of these resources, hopefully my opponent will land on this blade, then I can move my piece and get more resources for doing that. However, this game does come with some twists where if you stockpile too many resources, that can end up kind of biting you in the ass really, because you can lose all your resources if there's no more in the supply when somebody takes them. So I played a two-player game of this one. It was a bit more of a jarring game than the ones I played previously, because I think the orientation in which these fruits are positioned, because this is completely modular, can definitely change the tempo of the game, because if you've got two similar types next to each other, then you're going to have to go all the way around the windmill again to get those resources. So sometimes it's a good idea to keep a fair spread of all your pieces. Now I did make some silly rookie mistakes here by finishing the stacks of tiles, and whoever has the most of a certain type of fruit already collected in the tiles in front of them, then there's another tile that goes to the person who has that majority, and I ended up giving my opponent too many points that way because I was trying to go for the diversity of the numbers, because there's other bonus tiles you can get here. I probably do need to record a review of this one quickly, but I want to try it more at some different player counts. But I have a feeling this will probably be better at 2 or 3 players, because with these higher player counts, it can be a bit more chaotic, I suppose, because there's more moving parts. And it is a very tactical game anyway, so maybe that won't be too much of an issue. But I definitely like this game a lot. I think I can give it a 7 out of 10 now. It might go beyond that, but when I first talked about this one on my kind of ranking videos, I wasn't sure whether to give it a commendation or not, and I think I will give this one a commendation at the moment. So yeah, really liking this one. That is Finca. I played a 2-player game of Splitter, one of my favourite little roll and write games. Another chaotic game really, and it can be a very frustrating game as you're rolling these dice and trying to, or you're putting these numbers on these sheets like this, and you're trying to create groups of these numbers. But obviously, the more dice you roll, the tighter the board gets, and it can become quite problematic in getting all these numbers matching each other. So it's quite a difficult little puzzle. Again, very reactionary, but I do like it a lot. That is Splitter. I played a couple of games of District Noir. This one, when I've talked about exhaustion really on this particular series, because this one does hit the table so regularly, because it has good choices for a 2-player game. It takes around 15 minutes. You can play a few games back to back. I just really like the pacing of this one. And I've had some amazingly tight games of this, and I think this is just more of the same really. So if you don't know about this game, check out my content on it. I think I've done a part of a 3-game compilation video if you want to see my thoughts on it, but it's a really nice one, and I think it's just been reprinted in English. So that is District Noir. I played some more Nomalia. So Nomalia is a game that actually came top of my 10 games ranked series recently. This is a puzzly game that does borrow a lot from a lot of other different games. It has this overlapping mechanism as you are, matching these terrains and different animal types to try and score these variable objective cards. You're doing a simple pass and draft mechanism, but it does have this really cool scoring system where every round a different combination of cards will score. And if you're familiar with games such as Cartographers or the Isle of Skye, then you'll probably be aware of that mechanism. And it's one that's not used very often, actually, and I think it should be, because it works really well. And it lets you pivot on a spot, really. But just a really pleasant, puzzly game, tiny box, very fast. It's a good one. That is Noir. I played another game of Wizards of the Grimoire. So this is a head-to-head dueling game, which is very mechanical. It's all about trying to deplete your opponent's health, but you are building a little tableau of cards, trying to optimize it and kind of overcome or exploit your opponent's weaknesses and, you know, enhance your own, I suppose. So it does feel a bit more mechanical than your average dueling game. It's not so confrontational, I suppose, and that's probably why I agree with this one so much. I did play this game quite a few weeks ago, in terms of me talking about it now, so I can't remember exactly how the game went, but, you know, it's still hitting the table, which kind of, you know, shows how much I like this one, because, again, these kind of games normally are not my cup of tea, but this one has held its own. So that is Wizards of the Grimoire. I played some more Rome in a Day. So fairly recent release, this one from Alley Cat Games. It's definitely a family-friendly drafting game, but it uses this I split you choose mechanism. We are dividing up these tiles and you're building up this little map here, trying to place the buildings next to these certain terrain types, or even on those terrain types, to get points. But of course you want to be dividing up these tiles to suit you, but not give yourself too much of a benefit, because your opponent will draft it before you get the remainder. So it does have that little conflict there on how to divide these tiles up. I played this 2-player again, so I think I've only actually played this 2 players so far, which works perfectly fine, but I am interested to see how it scales up to that 5-player count. But most of the play is simultaneous anyway. And I thought I was doing really well here. I ended up doing, on my last turn, making quite a significant change in my division of the tiles by having a 1 tile and 4 tiles. And I think my opponents saw through what I was trying to do. They took the smaller stack, leaving me with all these tiles. Even though there was a high quantity of them, they were not ones I exactly wanted. And something I definitely overlooked is the power of drafting these gems, because they score on a sliding scale. And if you kind of monopolise these, that's a hell of a lot of points you're collecting, and that's what came back to haunt me. So yeah, still really liking this one. I'm not sure if it will hold up long term, because it is very light. But it's definitely pleasant, and I will play it quite a few more times before I make that decision whether to keep it in my collection or not for the long term. But right now, I'm enjoying it. That is Rome in a Day. Couple of bigger box games now. So I played a 5-player game of Jorvik. So this one I played at my local games club. Introduced this to 4 other people who had not played the game before, and I think they were a little bit apprehensive at the time, because I'm not sure what kind of games they're into, and this one is obviously not one in the hotness, or it's not being talked about a lot. But I'm happy to say it went down extremely well. I mean, the tension really did start to shine through. We all went for a very different strategy. And if you're not familiar with this game, it's a Steffenfeld bidding game, as you're trying to bid on these cards by placing your meeples in this queuing system. The more people go for the same card, the more expensive it's going to be. But the earlier you bid, you get kind of first refusal. So you can kind of rack up the prices by stacking your meeples somewhere and make other people pay more. Or if they're not willing to pay those prices, then you can get it for cheaper. A very cool mechanism. I've only seen it used once or twice. This being one example, Spirium being the other example. But I do like all these different things you're juggling. It's extremely tight. At 5 players, it seemed extra tight, because you really don't have that much money to play with, and you really need to hone in on the cards you exactly want. But it is cool. Again, as I said, we went for very different mechanisms here. I suffered a bit because I didn't have any conversion cards to convert resources into other resources and things. But one of my opponents really focused on the fighting off the barbarians that came out. That very nearly won them the game. Some people were doing a bit more of a diverse strategy, going for the contracts. It's just a really solid game that I think is very overlooked in terms of the Steffenfeld catalogue. And it scales brilliantly from 3 to 5 players. I think it does actually accommodate 2, but again, with bidding games, I tend to like more players than that. But yeah, this one has definitely found its place in my collection. I think it's very good. That is Jorvik. Next up, I have a game that I spoke highly of in my ranking video. This is Rocio. So this is a Pythagoras, or by Pythagoras Games. It's a puzzly little tile placer as you are communally building this road of these very nice looking tiles. And then you're playing these cards in front of you, trying to score these different combinations and patterns. But it goes beyond that, and there definitely is a few more wrinkles to this one, as Pythagoras tend to like throwing a spanner in their work and throwing some probably predictable mechanisms on their head to try different things. And this one, you have this card queuing system where when you play a card, it's going to score for 3 rounds, because every round you're playing a new card, it's going to slide down. So if there's tons of a pattern on the board, you have the matching card to it, then again you can score it over 3 rounds and rack up big points there. But you cannot keep playing pattern cards unless you have money. And then to get money, you need to basically play more tiles, which will of course create other opportunities, and so on. So this is actually a very well-rounded game. And I think the things they've done to it to make it beyond basic are very clever. Now, despite that, I do find that the decisions are somewhat predictable. And the more I've played this one, I've slightly started to, understand that. And I suppose logic would say the same thing. If there's a ton of the same pattern, you're obviously going to play that card or draft that card if you can. You're generally incentivized to play as many tiles as you can, because that's a way to get more money. So I found like a lot of these decisions did right themselves. Now, I don't want it to sound overly negative, because I think this is a very neat game, but I don't think it's quite collection worthy after several plays, because, again, at first play I was quite sold on it. But after more plays, I'm thinking, this is a good one, way better than average, but is it quite, a great? And I don't think it is. So that is Rocio. I played the 2-player game of Trekking Through History. So this is it's a very pleasant kind of a set collection game, as you're collecting these things in different ways. You're collecting these tokens to try and score these objective cards like this, and you're always stacking from top to bottom, and the further you kind of dive deeper, I suppose, on these sheets, the more points you can possibly get. But the way you're getting these tokens is by drafting these kind of date cards or these event cards, and they'll come with a bunch of different symbols on them, and even come with bonus symbols at the bottom. But as you can see, they are all dated with the unique date on them, and you're trying to collect these chronologically, so from early date to the newest date. And if you ever break that chain, you have to start a new column of cards, which is going to be worth fewer points. So you are incentivized to not break those chains as much as possible. I like the use of the timing system here. If you're familiar with games like Patchwork, this one uses almost identical system, and it definitely works really well. It's a game that I can probably objectively recommend to more gateway gamers or families. It looks very nice, got great production values. I'm not quite sure if it's going to be something I'm always going to come back to anymore. I've played it quite a few times. I like what it offers, but I think ultimately I want something with a little bit more bite now. And for that reason, I think I can recommend it, but it's probably not one that I'm going to seek myself to play anymore. But I definitely think it does what it does and what it's trying to do extremely well. So that is Trekking Through History. I've played a couple of games of Twisty Tracks. So this one is the newest game by Jeffrey Allers. He makes some good tile placement games. And this one is very similar to a game called Suro, if you're familiar with that one. However, this one you have your own player board, and you're moving these trains around, trying to keep them on the board as long as possible, because the longer you keep them there, the more points you're going to get, because every time these trains move from border to border or tile to tile, you'll get a point, essentially. But at the same time, you are under pressure to get these trains to the different stations on the border of your player sheet here, because the earlier you get there, the more points you're going to get. Or if you're too late, you might not even find a spot at all, and have no opening whatsoever and get no points. So it has that kind of conflicting mechanism of trying to keep it on the board and score points that way, but trying to get them home, but not too early, because you don't want to waste some opportunities to score the tiles, and at the same time you don't want to be too late, because all those opportunities could be gone. Very simple, very fast. Always just drawing tiles at the same time as other players, and they're just building up your little board. So it definitely is multiplayer solitaire with that slight race aspect. It's very charming. It's a little bit chaotic. It feels quite funny when you create these really long routes and can rack up loads of points by making it travel halfway across the board. And it's nice. Now, I'm not sure, again, if this one is a great game. I don't think it is, but I think it does what it does well. I think it's a nice game to teach to people who aren't even into board gaming, because it is funny and it is, it is quite charming in the way that it works. But again, is it amongst these great games out there at the moment? I probably don't think so, but it is a niche, I suppose, and I don't know too many games who use that kind of tile laying mechanism where you instantly move your piece onto the next tile and follow the track, apart from Zero, as I mentioned. So this one, I don't have anything else like it in my collection, and I probably will keep it for a few more plays and then reassess my decision to, maintain it long term in my collection. But yeah, that's still up for debate, I suppose. The games I've had here have been very close again. I think this is one of those games where no matter what you do, you are pretty much looking at a close score to your opponents. And it's going to be those minor decisions that are going to swing the winner or the loser. But it is nice that you can go for these different approaches. Are you going to rush for the stations, or are you going to try to keep them on the map? So that is Twisty Tracks. I don't think this one's really been spoken about yet. It's not really hit the the mainstream yet, but it could do well if people knew about it. That is, Twisty Tracks. And the final game of my own here that I played is the new version of Ra. So Ra, one of my favourite games of all time. I played a 2-player game of this one. Kind of took a little bit getting used to the new tiles. And I think this went pretty well for me. I ended up winning quite significantly, I think, because I got a monopoly on the Pharaohs. The Pharaohs kept on scoring me points. I managed to, I think, score the Nile tiles every single round, which is always a big factor. And managed to pace my bids quite well, I suppose. So I am quite experienced with this game. So that probably comes with the territory, really. But love this one. This is a game that's it's not a filler game. It's not a long game either. But it's a game that I'll play anytime, anywhere, at any player count, because it is that much fun. And it's one of the all-time classics. So that is Ra. Just a couple of games now that I don't have physically here. One was Downforce, where I played someone else's copy. Kramer, I think it's Kramer and Kiesling racing game. Kind of betting as well. I like it. Very simple card play. Very intuitive. Nice and smooth. And I also played a 3-player game of Fantasy Realms. A very popular set collection game where you're trying to combo these cards together. And I'm terrible at Fantasy Realms, and I managed to just squeeze a win this time. And it's really nice to use the scoring app as well to really speed up that scoring part of the game, which normally takes longer than the game itself. But it's still a really well done game. So that's all the games I've been playing in June, sorry. If you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other content too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye-bye.